After 20 years, introducing the author O. Henry. William Sidney Porter, 1860 to 1910, known by his pen name O. Henry, was an American writer. His short stories are known for their wit, wordplay, warm characterization, and surprise. The policeman on the beat moved up the quiet road smartly. His smartness was habitual and not for show, for spectators were few. The time was only 10 o'clock at night. But the locality was one that kept early hours, and chilly winds and a drizzle had almost peopled the streets, examining closed doors as he went, making various interesting and playful movements with his small stick, the officer. With his stalwart figure and smart movements made a fine picture of the guardian of the law. He could see a few lights coming from a cigar store, an all-night hotel, and one or two tailoring shops. Completing the day's work, the majority of the houses were business places that had long since been closed. Now and then he would suddenly turn about and cast his watchful eye along the peaceful road. He was thinking of what his boss had said in the morning. Pale face, square jaws, deep and dark eyes, and a little white scar near the right eyebrow. As a part of the police organization, he felt a little ashamed that the name of this notorious criminal was still unknown, and that he was still at large. Printing counterfeit notes was a serious affair, he knew, and the criminal must be caught. He took out his pocketbook under a lamppost and looked at the $5 note and the reconstructed photograph. He became thoughtful. Chicago, 1,000 miles away. What chance? Then he said to himself aloud, "Never mind, my boy. You have been a dutiful one these last 18 years, and luck owes you a debt." He was in the habit of talking to himself sometimes when nobody was by, and he liked to refer to himself as a boy, though he was 40. There was another thing in his mind. He looked at his watch. 10:15, 15 minutes more. It was a long road, but there was enough time. After a minute, he descried about 500 meters ahead the outline of a man near the doorway of a darkened hardware store. He quickened his steps. The place was slightly dark, lying exactly midway between two lampposts. He was about to address the man, but changed his mind and aloud. The man to begin. The man realized that the way he was standing there must look suspicious to one who didn't know his story. So he said, as the policeman walked up to him, "It's all right, officer. I'm just waiting for a friend. It is an appointment made 20 years ago." It sounds a little funny to you, doesn't it? Well, I'll explain so as to remove all suspicion from your mind. About 20 years ago, there used to be a restaurant where this store stands, Brady's Restaurant, until 5 years ago, said the officer. It was torn down then. He was about to take the hand of the stranger, but checked himself. The man in the doorway struck a match and lit his cigar. The policeman had a chance to look at the face of the man. 20 years ago tonight, said the man. I dined here at Brady's with Jimmy Wells, my best chum, and the finest chap in the world. We were both born and brought up here in New York. Just like two brothers. I was 18 and Jimmy was 20. The next morning I was to start for the West to make my fortune. Jimmy was a homing bird. You couldn't have dragged Jimmy out of New York. He thought it was the only place on earth. Well, we agreed that night that we would meet here again exactly 20 years from that date and time, no matter what our conditions might be or from what distance we might have to come. We felt that in 20 years each of us would have had his career made and got what life had to give. It sounds pretty interesting, said the policeman. Rather a long time between meets, it seems to me. Haven't you heard from your friend since you left? Well, yes, for a time we corresponded, said the other, but after a year or two we lost track of each other. Though Chicago was what you call my headquarters, I kept moving around a lot, but I know Jimmy will meet me here if he's alive. For he always was the truest, staunchest old chap in the world. He'll never forget. I came 1,000 miles to stand at this door tonight. And it's worth it if my old partner turns up. The waiting man pulled out a handsome watch, the lid of it set. With small diamonds, 10:25, he said. It was exactly 10:30 when we parted here at the restaurant door. Made lots of money out in the West, didn't you? Asked the policeman. Well, it wasn't bad, I must admit. I hope Jimmy has done half so well. He was somewhat slow in the brain. Though he was a good fellow, I've had to compete with some of the sharpest wits in the world to earn my dollars. A man gets into the rut in New York. The West requires fighting and teaches it. The policeman took a step or two. I hope your friend comes around all right, he said. Are you going to wait for some time in case he doesn't turn up at the appointed time? He asked. I'll give him half an hour, said the other. If Jimmy is alive on Earth, he'll be here by the time. So long, officer. Good night, sir, said the policeman, passing on along his beat, examining doors as he went. The wind was growing more chilly, and the drizzle was thickening. The few people who were out quickened their steps, their coat collars turned up and hands pocketed. And near the door of the hardware store the man who had come 1,000 miles to fill an appointment with the friend of his youth smoked his cigar and waited. About 20 minutes he waited. And then a tall man in a long overcoat with collar turned up to his ears hurried across from the opposite side of the street. He went directly to the waiting man. Is that you, Bob? He asked doubtfully. Is that you, Jimmy Wells? Cried the man near the door. Bless my heart, exclaimed the new arrival, grasping both the other's hands with his own. It's Bob, sure as fate. I was certain I'd find you here if you were still in existence. Like the video and subscribe our channel for more interesting stories.